So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to put a Digitrax DN166I2B decoder board that is without sound into an InterMountain DCC ready FP7A. Just like magic, this unit appears. This happens to be 5045, and this is the unit that already has the decoder installed. But what I'm going to do is, right now the decoder is non-functional, and I'm going to show you why it is non-functional and how to make it functional. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to take off the body from the frame first. Now, what you'll notice is there is a coupler on the front, and it's held to the frame by a Phillips screw, which is right here. And hopefully you folks can see that. Maybe I can zoom in. There, does that make it better for you? It probably does. There's a Phillips screw that attaches to the frame right there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an Aught 3 Phillips screwdriver, and off camera I'm going to remove that screw. So hold on just a second. And voila, you can see that after removing the screw, you can pull the pilot right out, or excuse me, the coupler right out from the hole, rectangular hole in the pilot. So it just pulls straight out. So that's all you have to do. Now, my coupler doesn't happen to have the metal magnetic curved hook on it, because it kept getting hung up on all of my Ys and turnouts that I had in my layout. So I pulled it out with pliers just to get by, and I'll work a little bit later on maybe getting it deeper in, but for now that's where we stand. Now that we have that, we need to take the body off of the frame. And since we have the front truck off, all you have to do that is to simply hold the top of the frame until the chassis, sorry about my hand, until the chassis falls away from the frame. And you can see how easy it was to do that. I'm going to hold this and I'm going to pull the rest of the body away, and we'll set it aside. And we'll go ahead and set the front coupler mechanism aside. Now you can see the board. This happens to have the DN166I2B board already installed, but disassembly of the light board that comes with the InterMountain FP7A is the same manner. The reason why I'm taking this apart is it doesn't work because, and I'll point to it, this motor lead and this motor lead are grounded to the frame down at the engine, or excuse me, the electric DC motor. In a DC engine, you can actually ground the motor to the frame halves and it doesn't matter. But in DCC, if you do that, it causes big problems. The DCC functions won't work. So as a result, I have to take this one back apart, and I'm going to show you how I isolate the wires from now on to make sure that everything is good. And this is not my idea. This is a tip that came from InterMountain when they suggested that I put this in after it didn't work. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the soldering gun ready, and I'm going to show you how to unsolder everything. And this is the same manner in which we would unsolder everything on the light board, so the process is the same. First off, you'll take a aught-2 screwdriver and you're going to remove these two bolts, screws. So here's the first one. And here's the second one. In looking underneath the board, I believe these screws are the ground screws for the board, or they are power to the board. So what we're going to do is we're going to set these both offside. And now you can see that the board is free to move, but we still need to unsolder 4 connections. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. For those of you that have or have not soldered before, I was kind of intimidated the first time I did it, but it's actually not that bad. All you have to do after your soldering iron is hot is just touch it, and lo and behold, it comes loose. Now in the stock light board, you have these 4 wires. There's the first one. Here's the second one. And then you have the 2 right here, which are lights. Front headlight in this example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it around for easier access for me. That's 3. And this will be 4. There. Now, as I put my soldering iron away, because I don't want to hurt myself, and it will hurt, you'll notice 2 holes in the decoder board. You're going to find the same holes in a different location in the InterMountain light board. So just pull them out, and now your board's free. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to take apart this screw, the trucks will fall out, and I'm going to take the plastic fuel tank off. So hold on just a second. Now, after using an aught-2 Phillips screwdriver to take the bolt and nut away from the front and the back, the trucks fell out. I removed the plastic fuel tank, which was quite easy. Just slide a fingernail underneath both tabs and it peels away. Very easy. You'll notice the 2 wires for the motor leads that are attached eventually down to the motor. Now this is from the factory. You'll notice there are bare spots right here and right here. That's going to be something that we're going to have to fix with shrink tubing, and we'll do that in a second. And it looks like the red lead down to the motor is in pretty good shape. I don't see any issues, but we are going to find some issues, I'm sure, when we get down into the bottom of the locomotive. So what we're going to do is we're going to crack the locomotive in half, and I'll show you that in a second. I laid the locomotive on its side, and all you have to do is kind of wiggle it apart, and then you can set half of the chassis off to the side, and you can see the actual problem that we have. You can see, sorry I'm shaking folks, you can see where the motor lead is soldered here, into the tab that goes down to the brushes. There is a very good chance that this will rotate and touch this frame that we just removed. It'll touch the frame right here, and as a result it will ground out. So what we need to do is we need to, in this case, slide some shrink tubing that's going to be out of length from here to here, and that should do us for this side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and show you the finished product. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get some shrink tubing, and I'm going to cut the shrink tubing to, how much would you say? About that much? Let's try that much. And then we're going to slide the shrink tubing, as soon as we get a hold of it, over the wire. Now, if you're doing this installation for the first time and you've just taken off the light board, from now on you're going to see everything that I'm going to see. So basically what you do is you slide this shrink tubing completely over everything as far as you can. Now, once we've done that, I'm going to use my soldering iron to kind of touch it too and shrink the shrink tubing. I don't want to use a heat gun because I'm scared. I'm going to push down a little bit on it to make sure that it doesn't move around too much, because it's going to make you guys sick when you try to watch the video. And then we're going to go on to the other side. It looks pretty good over there, but you know, it probably wouldn't hurt to throw a little heat just to make sure that everything stays put. So that's what you need to do in theory, is just to make sure that everything that is past the frame, plastic frame of the locomotive, is insulated. So now we've got the heat shrink insulating everything. You can't get all the way down to the brushes, but that's okay. That's fine. So let's go ahead and do the other side. Now what I did was I simply lifted the motor and plastic motor carrier straight out of the chassis, and you can see what is left over, and I'll point with the electric motor here, is the rear drive gear, the dog bone which is attached to the drive gear. You have a small, what I'll call a drive shaft with slots in either end of it. You can see that the front drive shaft is still through grease, still stuck inside, but we can put it in there. And then you can see the front, and I'll try to shine the light on it. You can see the front drive gear that goes into the drive shaft, almost a U-joint if you will. And then here's the bearing blocks that go into the chassis and the drive gear. So we'll talk about that in a second. But what is interesting right now to show you is there's our repaired side, and you can see the black, I guess, or what I would call the negative side of the engine, which we'll remember will go down. You can see the bare wire from the factory, both right there. There's another small bare chunk right here, and then also you can see that this point where they soldered into the motor, kind of occurs to me that you can't see that very well, and my apologies. Here's one bare spot. There's a bare spot on the other side of here, and then this also can contact the frame. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide a piece of shrink wrap tubing from as close as we can get to that motor brush assembly all the way up to cover this piece, and then I'm going to slide a small piece over here also to try to make sure that everything is well insulated and we don't have to worry about a ground. So what I'm going to do offline real quick is go ahead and put those pieces on and heat shrink them on just like I did the other side.